it's time for Mike and Victoria here on WPSL 1590, talking the Treasure Coast. And with us right now is Mr. Mike Pollis. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Greg. Right now, it's not the Victoria and Mike show. It's just the Mike show.
It's Mike and Mike. Oh,
Mike and Mike. No, Victoria will be joining us here shortly. She is having some technical difficulties because we're doing all this remotely for our listeners, and sometimes we run into some technical challenges.
Yes, you do. Yep. How well we know is poor Cliff puts up with me from coast to coast and and using Zoom now. Yeah. Oh yeah, we have those problems.
But Greg, I have to give you kudos because I just heard you on the previous show and you were talking medical. I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge. You can talk about anything.
Yeah. Well, the medical stuff, as a former pitcher, believe me, I've experienced a lot of it.
Yeah,
I know about rotator cuff surgeries.
Oh yeah, that is a painful surgery. My mother had just gone through that, and it was a long, slow recovery period.
Oh yeah. Well, even when you're young, and ironically, I had one rotator cuff surgery in 1990 when we were doing the Dodger 100-year show. I flipped a tripod up, as I always would, on my right shoulder. And for some reason, I did it the wrong way. Something snapped, and I was a left-handed pitcher. So, I mean, I couldn't believe it. And, yep, I had to go into the ninth there. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's back when they used like a chisel to do surgeries.
Well, I think they were using one of those cement cutters or something. No, actually, I was very fortunate. The orthopedic surgeons for the Dodgers and all the rest of them in LA are the best. So yeah, it was very cool.
Very good. Yeah, well, this is a real estate show. It's not a medical show. And we are going to talk a little bit about real estate and about mortgage financing. And I see that Victoria is close to joining us. So hopefully she'll be able to add some insight here. But as all of our listeners know, it's a fabulous time in the real estate industry, either to get a mortgage or refinance a mortgage. Interest rates are at a record all-time low. We have seen a little bit of a tick up over the last 2 weeks. However, interest rates are still wonderful. We are offering some low rates, all in, for most people, they'll qualify in the 3% range. Now I have to give a disclaimer. If I give an exact interest rate, I have to also provide an APR, which I'm not really prepared to do at this point right now. And also I do have to disclose that I do have an NMLS number, and I have to give that to all of our listeners. My NMLS number is 301789, and I'm with East Coast Mortgage Lenders. And I'm here to help our customers or listeners to answer any questions they have with regards to mortgages, getting pre-qualified for a mortgage, how to get your credit in place or in shape to purchase a home in the future. I'm here to help.
I was watching CNBC, and they were saying that at least cautioning that because of everything that's going on with all the COVID relief stuff like that, that the interest rates should be going up at least by the end of the year, if not sooner, and maybe a precipitous jump.
Yeah, actually, we've experienced some very, very low rates all throughout 2020. Well, since approximately March is when the market dropped. And it's been a record year for us for mortgage originations. We were experiencing rates in the low twos. Now, the mortgage interest rates closely follow the 10-year Treasury security and how that yield works. Now, at the beginning of the year, we were under 1%. We were at like 0.9. And last week, we jumped up to about 1.6%. Now, that's still extremely low by historical standards. However, it's quite a big jump in a very short period of time for us. Just to give you an example, back in November, the 10-year T-bill was approximately at 0.5%. Now, since November, we've gone up over 1%. Now, and obviously that has effect on mortgage interest rates. So normally when you see that 10-year T-bill increase, mortgage interest rates go right along with it. So, we were looking in the low twos. Now we're looking in the low threes. If you're very well qualified, because interest rates are based on your qualifications, if you're very well qualified, you could still probably get in the upper twos. But those days of mid twos, I think, are behind us. I don't think we're going to see those for quite some time.
When you talk about various rates, I mean, obviously, if your credit score is a little lower, your rates are going to be a little higher. What is a relatively, say, an okay credit score for buying a home?
Well, Greg, that really depends on what type of a mortgage that you're going to be applying for. And that's where I come in and I'll guide our listeners and our customers into what product is best for them. Because if your credit score, for example, is 675, which is a little bit below the national average, conventional financing might not be in your best interest. Now, it's a different story if you're putting a very large down payment, because what happens with conventional financing, when I'm saying conventional financing, it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. These are the traditional types of funding sources that we use. So when if you have a very large down payment, but your credit score isn't perfect, then conventional might still be a good option for you. What happens is when your score is below 700 on a conventional loan, it's a fairly large premium that they'll charge onto the interest rate. Normally, if you're putting a modest down payment down and your credit score is below 700, I would probably recommend that you consider an FHA loan. FHA is much more lenient on credit score. We typically will go down to 620 on a FHA loan, and before COVID, we would typically go down to 600 and 580. On the onset of COVID, most of the lenders that we sell to have artificially or self-imposed a minimum credit score, because FHA does not have a minimum credit score. If you look in any of their guidelines, it doesn't say that there is a minimum credit score of any sort. It's the lenders that put self-imposed scores onto that. In fact, if you don't have any credit whatsoever, if you're fresh out of college or you're just not a user of credit, you're not a believer of credit, and we have a lot of listeners out there that think along these lines. If you have no credit score, FHA is a great opportunity to finance a house. Now, you might not get the best of interest rate, but it'll still be a very good interest rate.
My mother was like that. If she didn't have the money, she wouldn't buy a car. She'd walk into a car dealership, write a check, and with our home in Westchester, did the same thing. And she just didn't believe in credit.
Yeah, and I experienced a lot of borrowers after the last recession, 2008, 2009. A lot of those borrowers got financially hurt during that recession, and they just did not want to jump back into that situation with a lot of credit. So for a while there, we were dealing with quite a few customers without any credit scores. Now, FHA does not discriminate for customers who don't use credit, and that's a good thing. Now, what they would typically do is they'll ask you to create a credit, like a non-traditional type of credit report. When I say non-traditional, like your rent, if you're renting a property, you're not that rent history does not typically show up on your credit report. Hey, but if you can provide me 12 months worth of canceled rent checks, or if you do auto pay, 12 months worth of bank statements that shows that you pay your rent on time, that's you're creating a credit history for yourself, and we can use that. Typically, we ask for like 2 or 3 things to verify a credit history if you don't have traditional type of credit. And one would be a perfect example would be rent. Then we would use like car insurance, health insurance, anything that you pay on a regular basis can be considered a rental history or I'm sorry, a credit history. So there are unique ways to establish credit and make a credit report for yourself.
Well, now, okay, so say you do that, and you're paying the FPL bill, you're paying whatever, maybe a water bill as well. I mean, do those things then eventually wind up going to one of those three credit reporting agencies?
No, it doesn't get reported to the credit agency, but what I have been seeing, and I am not an expert in this, but um, a couple of the credit bureaus are now allowing you to enhance your credit with self-reporting your utility bills. Like if you have cable, water, electric, you can request through the credit agencies to have that appear on your credit report, and that will then start affecting your credit score, hopefully in an upward fashion. Obviously, if you don't pay those utilities on time, you don't want those being reported on your credit report, obviously. But there are ways to enhance your credit report. Matter of fact, it's a shame Victoria isn't with us here. She still must be having some difficulties joining in. But I was just talking to one of her customers. Um, and, she was caught in a situation where the credit was damaged some years ago. And she never reestablished a credit history until just recently. What she did is she opened up a couple of small secured credit cards to start establishing a credit history. Then what she did is she went to a relative and requested to be an authorized user on one of their credit cards. Now, obviously, if your relative has bad credit, you don't want to be an authorized user of their account. But if you have someone like a parent who wants to help you out and to establish credit history, what a good way to establish history is to become an authorized user on a credit card account. Now, the nice thing about that is the actual account owner who's lending you the credit doesn't have to give you any access to that account whatsoever. They're just allowing you to be an authorized user on that account. Now, the nice thing about that is if you have a very limited credit history, if that account was established for 10 years, you instantly overnight get 10 years worth of credit history onto your credit report.
Even if you've never used it?
Even if you've never used it, that history transfers right onto your credit report. Now, we can't build a whole credit history, based on someone else's credit. You do have to establish your own credit, but it is a very easy way to build up your credit, and that affects your score at the same time. So, if you're just really close to the borderline of qualifying credit wise, that might be an easy way to get yourself 20, 30 points like overnight.
Wow. But there again, that's where you're flexible in that situation where, say, a bank or say a credit union probably would not come anywhere close to that flexibility.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, a lot of this stuff is not in the FHA handbook. A lot of these, we call them overlays, but what the overlay is basically self-imposed limitations on what the lenders are willing to do. Big box banks typically have more overlays and they're more conservative in what they will allow. Now, I'll give you an example. Most, like we were just discussing, using an authorized user on your credit report to establish your credit score and credit history. Most lenders, most big box banks will have a stipulation that you have to have so many credit lines open for a designated period of time. So that might be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and a certain number of accounts that have been established. And that is normal. That is very typical. And The reason why it's great to deal with a company like ours, East Coast Mortgage Lenders, is because we don't sell to just one institution. We're designated as a lender, so we do everything in-house. But we have the ability, once that loan is closed, to sell that loan to a lot of different lenders. That gives us a lot of opportunities to use a whole host of different guidelines out there. So if a loan doesn't work with one particular lender, we have the ability to flip it around, use the same appraisal, use the same credit report, and send that off to a different lender.
Well, Victoria is on the phone with us. And Victoria, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
You are echoing really bad.
Yeah, I can tell that. Let me try to turn this down. Hold on. And I'm on a regular phone.
Are we good?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, now all of a sudden we have
Can
massive
you hear me at all?
barely.
Okay, hold on. Is this any better?
A little bit better.
Okay, how about that?
Now, are you calling in on the Zoom line or?
No, regular phone.
Okay.
The Zoom line, it won't let me in.
You're in. Your name is up there, and Cliff sent you some notes.
I think what Victoria, you need to do is you need to turn on your camera and turn on your microphone.
I did.
Yeah, you have to unmute yourself, and you'll be good. You're in.
I'm unmuted.
Now you're muted.
Now it says unmuted.
Well, we can keep her on mute and use the phone.
Yeah.
Put it on that. Now it says mute.
Okay.
Like backwards.
Okay. Well, try and talk. But we're getting some really severe echo from your side.
Okay, can you hear it? Is that any better?
I got your voice fine, but our voice is bouncing right back to you.
No, it seems you're better now too for me.
Okay. All right.
I think if we're going to use the phone, I think Victoria, you should click that button that says mute on the Zoom, and then we could continue on with the show.
Yeah, it does say mute right now, Mike.
Yeah, just click that button.
Then it says unmute.
That's perfect. Now just use the phone, and we'll be good.
Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah, but I'm listening to you, Mike, and we know about all these situations with all our people all the time, which creates a lot of problems. But you know what's interesting out there? Even people that are trying to get rentals now, they're requiring at least a 650 to 700 credit score, which is making it very difficult for people even trying to rent.
Wow.
Yeah, matter of fact, that's what we're experiencing today with a customer that we're both working with. We had there's some credit issues, and initially she came to Victoria, but with the credit score, she wasn't able to rent. However, with the use of an FHA loan, there is a chance that we might be able to quickly fix the situation and she can buy a house. Now, imagine that. You don't qualify to rent, but you can qualify to buy. That's what kind of market we're in. It's such a high demand rental market right now that the landlords are being extremely choosy on who they take.
But isn't that unrealistic for a landlord to ask for 700 plus credit score?
Well, it depends. It depends on. It's such a fast moving market, both in the rental market and the purchase market. Literally, if you're looking to buy a house, when a good one comes along, it's snapped up within a day. And it's the same, really, with the same way with the rental market. If a decent rental comes along, it might not be a day, but it would certainly be within a week. It would be rented. So the landlords are being choosy. As a lender, we're lending to literally thousands and thousands of borrowers. So the chances of we're able to absorb a default, but a landlord if they have one rental property and their tenant stops paying, especially in this new land of COVID, it could possibly take, several months to get them evicted. So before you can get a new tenant in there. And matter of fact, I hear they've extended the eviction process, indefinitely. So we don't know how long those tenants could stay in a property and not pay their rent. Now, fortunately, if you have a mortgage, you can file for a forbearance if your tenant's not paying. However, if you have a rental property and you don't have a mortgage on it, and you're depending on that rental income as your income to pay the bills, then that's a big problem. You could go 7, 8 months before that tenant has to pay, and you might not be able to evict them out of there. So that's a serious problem. As a landlord, I would be the same way. I would require a 700 credit score because I can't afford to absorb that hit as an individual.
Wow. I'm really taken back by this conversation. It just seems so unusual. I would think a landlord, if he had an open piece of property, would just rent it. But
Well, he will, but like Mike is saying, and I just had this experience. We went in, first day it went on the market, and they had multiple applications, and they did not take our application. And they asked for application fees. They asked to do background checks. They asked to do credit reports. And it's a lot of money you spend every single time before they'll even make a decision on who they're going to pick. So you can put out hundreds of dollars and get turned down before you even rent.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Most landlords nowadays are using tenant screening services, and it's typical for a full tenant screening, a background check, a previous landlord reference, credit report. I mean, that could be $150. So, a landlord can't absorb all those expenses. What they'll do is, they'll take your application and take your application fee. And if you don't meet the individual landlord's requirements, then you're out.
That's right.
And you lose the fee, I take it, right?
Normally, yeah.
Yeah. And there was one company we were working with, and they said, we want a full month's rent, and we will take it off the market while we're processing yours. But that would like $1,750 up front before they take it off the market.
Wow.
I can't believe that. That's
Yeah.
outrageous.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Things that people don't understand now that we have to go through, and there's a process, and a lot of times we speak with people and they go, Victoria, I've never heard of that before. But this is reality of what life is today.
Wow. That totally blows me away that, something like that could actually happen in this day and age. It's amazing.
hey, Greg, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we can have callers call in and ask us some questions, correct? So
You bet. 340-1590, 340-1590. If this has ever happened to you, call in. Oh my. And then then call Mike for an FHA loan.
yeah, in fact, that is probably where a good 20% of my business is coming from now. People are getting disenchanted with trying to go out there and find a decent rental property. And let me tell you, the condition of some of these rental properties is just horrendous. They're going out there, they're paying exorbitant rents. I mean, if you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, it's not uncommon to get $17, $18, $19, even $2,000 rent on that, and it's nothing spectacular. And then when they go through the application process, it's actually almost as bad as, or worse, or difficult, I should say, than getting a mortgage application done. Now, let me tell you that we do verify everything under the sun these days. There are programs out there, and we offer them, that are more simplified, mainly for self-employed borrowers. And maybe I should touch base on those a little bit, because we do have a couple of really interesting programs that I doubt that any of the big bank lenders offer. One of them I'm using quite often these days, because as these home prices increase and the interest rates are starting to increase, it's starting to become a little bit more difficult to qualify for these payments. Because when we qualify for mortgage, we're not really qualifying you for a loan amount. We qualify you for that entire mortgage payment. So as rates go up, as prices go up, your payment goes up. So now it becomes more and more challenging to qualify for these higher payments. So what I've been using a lot is what's called asset utilization. Asset utilization is, let's say you're a retiree, and which a lot of our listeners are, and they have very limited taxable income. Maybe it's Social Security and a small pension. That in most situations, that's not going to qualify you for much. But maybe they're sitting on a pretty big chunk of assets in retirement accounts. Well, we have programs that will use those assets as income. A matter of fact, most people don't even know this. Conventional financing, Freddie Mac, has a program that allows you to take your retirement income, not only retirement income, any liquid asset, that would be bank accounts, checking accounts, retirement accounts, investment accounts. We'll take those assets, add them all together, divide that number by 240. Why 240? I have no idea. That's just what they came up with. But 240, and we use that in conjunction with your other income. So if you have Social Security income and you're sitting on some assets, we take that, divide it by 240, we add that to your income, and that now helps you qualify. So there's a lot of creative ways that we can help people that most other lenders, big box lenders, don't offer.
That's really intriguing, to say the least. If say you have a lot of the retirement accounts, that does count as income when you're filling out the forms, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like most underwriters will only use that as income if that asset is generating a taxable income. So if you have, $500,000 in a retirement account, but it's not being taxed because the revenue it's generating, the income it's generating, is just being rolled back into the retirement account. So you don't get taxed on that until you take it out. Well, a lot of people don't want to take that money out because they don't want to be taxed on it. So it stands to reason that these people can repay a loan. Like if you get into some difficulties, you can always liquidate that retirement account and pay off the mortgage. So we understand that. We understand that, a lot of people have the ability to repay these loans, but they don't want to take money out of a retirement account because they're going to be taxed to death on it. So we can use that as income. We take that money, we monetize it, we utilize it as income, we divide the total assets by 240 months, we use that as income. And that's a traditional type of loan. That's a Freddie Mac loan, a conventional loan. It's nothing weird. It's not a subprime loan. But that's the difference between using a company like ours versus going to the bank. And let me tell you, we don't have the high expenses that a bank would have. We have very limited expenses on office space and whatnot. So it allows us to offer a much more attractive deal as far as rates and fees go than a big box bank.
Victoria?
Yes, I'm here. That's perfect, Mike. And that's true because we didn't have any of those programs for a long time. And that'll help a lot of people that are self-employed. We get penalized all the time as being self-employed people. We should get bonuses for that.
Yeah, that's the one thing when I talk to a customer to pre-qualify them, the first thing they say is, I have this great accountant, I make all this money, but we're lucky enough to avoid paying taxes because we write a lot of that off. And that's wonderful if you're going to try to save some money, but it's a double-edged sword because it can come back to hurt you when you're trying to qualify for a mortgage. And that's when a program like I just went over could possibly help you. If you're and you don't have to be self-employed to use that program, but ideally, a lot of folks who are self-employed tend to shelter a lot of their income and it's not taxable. Therefore, it makes it difficult to use it to qualify. But if you're sitting on some assets, this is a good program to use. Matter of fact, I did mention subprime. We do have subprime loans out there. They went away for a long time, just like Victoria said. But I have a very similar type of program. It again uses asset utilization for income qualification. But instead of using 240 months, they'll take that asset amount and they'll divide it by 36 months. So if you're sitting on a couple $100,000 worth of assets and not showing a lot of income, you can divide that by 36. And under that program, we could use that as your monthly income to help you qualify. So there's a lot of different programs out there. So, for folks who have gone to, Quicken Loans or Rocket or Wells Fargo or any of these banks, and they say no, it doesn't necessarily mean there's not a product out there. It just means that they don't have the product for you.
Well,
and that's true. We already proved that right so many times.
that's very interesting that you would say that. The one thing I think that, was watching on CNBC, and the one thing COVID has given us is a real entrepreneurial spirit in this country, where there are a lot of people starting their own businesses now. You guys are right.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, we're a little bit more harsh on self-employed borrowers. So for that that individual entrepreneur who has seized the moment to take an opportunity in this COVID environment, unfortunately, with most lenders, with most banks, they're going to have to sit on the sideline for 2 years because most traditional type of mortgage programs require 2 years of self-employment income in order to use that to qualify. And again, I have other programs that don't have that requirement. So, you know what? The nice thing about our company, East Coast Mortgage Lenders, is we have the traditional programs. We have the FHA loans, VA loans, USDA loans, as well as a whole gamut of conventional type of programs. And we have a lot of subprime programs to offer. And just because they're called subprime doesn't mean they come with extraordinary high interest rates. I mean, yeah, you'll probably be paying a little bit more than a conventional loan on those types of programs because they come with higher risk for the lender to make them. But if you have an opportunity to buy a house today with the lower interest rates, even though you're going into one of these subprime loans with a slightly higher rate, you could still be in the 4% to 5% interest rate. Once you're established, you get your credit squared away, you get your income squared away, then we can possibly refinance that loan down the road. Doesn't mean that we'll be able to, but if we can point you in the right direction and you do everything that we suggest, then there's no reason to believe that we won't be able to refinance that program into something maybe where it can save you some extra funds in the future.
Well, it sounds like a great idea. Yeah, it really does. And, I remember back in the days, of course, you guys may not even been alive back then, when we bought our first house during the Jimmy Carter era, 18% interest rates. Oh, brother. I remember
Yeah,
that
that was a
well.
great real estate market. That was, properties were appreciating significantly, even with the higher interest rates, and people were still making money in the real estate market. I mean, correct me, Victoria, how much are properties increasing in value from year to year in today's market?
Well, like I said, the last time that I heard, I think it was up between 23 and 28% already from before. So, but I can see prices. Let's even talk about vacant land prices. They're up to now almost $70,000 and higher for lots now, where these builders were buying them for 15, 16, 20, 30. Now they're up to like 70,000 and higher.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I can give a testimonial to Victoria because I'm building a little project myself, and she was able to find me a lot. And yeah, it went up in value. I looked at the history of this lot, and the person I bought the lot from bought it about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and he paid $55,000. 1 year later, I'm paying $85,000. That is on just a vacant piece of ground. And it's just startling how real estate values have gone up.
Yeah, the little houses that you could probably get for under 100,000 are now going between 2 and 234. And these are houses that are around 1,000 square feet.
Well, and I remember, back in the day in Port St. Lucie, where some of those lots were going, in Western Port St. Lucie for $1,000, $1,500, and they
Well,
couldn't give them away.
I
Yeah.
couldn't give them away for 500. So
Yeah.
I started selling in 1978. I had a lot, and somebody could have bought it for $500, and they him-hauled and never bought it. And that's an 80 by 125 lot, a quarter of an acre. Now, what happened was Tesoro comes along, west of the Turnpike on Becker,
Yep.
does this beautiful development, sells the vacant land lots that are smaller than a quarter of an acre for $500,000 each. And when it crashed, they were selling for $16,000.
Oh, I remember that. You bet.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how much things have changed here. So, Mike, are you building in Martin or St. Lucie County?
I'm building in Martin County, and it's for a family member. So we're just, it's not for investment. We're just doing, for a family member. But getting back to the cost of construction, we started looking at this project, probably about 6 months ago, in the middle of COVID, and we started getting prices to build. So over the last 3 months, lumber alone has gone up 30%. 30%. It's just startling. Now, is this real inflation? I don't know. I don't know, but something tells me that it's probably some supply issues right now because of COVID. You have to remember 6 months of people not cutting trees down and not processing lumber. It was hard enough just to get toilet paper. So, imagine trying to get a piece of plywood. It's going to take the environment, the economy, a little bit of time to recoup from that. Because when you take 6 months of production out of the equation, I just don't know how you recoup that overnight. It's just going to take a while to sort itself out. And that's another thing. This inflation is creating the bubble in the interest rates, because when inflation goes up, interest rates go along with it. And that's what's causing, the significant increase in rates right now. So hopefully, as people go back to work, as supply starts, being generated, it hopefully will help reduce inflation. But then again, we just have $1.9 trillion of stimulus being dumped into the economy. That doesn't help inflation. So where rates go from here, who knows? It's a question mark.
Yeah,
But
that hurts people in purchasing too, because when the prices of homes are going up, right, Mike? And then you're getting qualified, let's say at 3%, and they go up to 4%. It makes a big difference in some people with their debt ratio. Is that true?
yeah, so that's, a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines thinking that this real estate thing is a bubble. And I'm here to attest that this is not a bubble. It is not going to go down anytime soon. We have a double whammy here in Florida. One, we have we had 6 months of supply taken off the market. All right, these builders couldn't build for 6 months, so that did not help supply. We have a huge inventory issue because of that, and you double the effect by all these folks leaving areas like New York City to come down here. The demand has gone up. So not only has the supply gone down, the demand has gone up tremendously. So as long as that occurs, this is not a bubble. It's not going to burst anytime soon. And another point I'd like to bring up too is there has never been a time in America where there has been this much equity in real estate. I mean, the average loan to value throughout the country right now is like 57%. There's like 43% worth of equity in real estate right now. And it's never been that high before. So even if the market levels out and someone loses their job because of COVID, do you think they're going to let that property go into foreclosure? Absolutely not. It's not going to happen. So the foreclosure bubble that people are waiting for is not going to happen, because they can easily turn around, sell that property probably within a week, and get out of that bad financial situation. Plus, who knows how long they're going to be allowing forbearance on mortgages. So if you can't make your mortgage payment, then you just simply file for forbearance and you don't have to make your mortgage payment. So forget about the whole foreclosure situation. That isn't going to happen. I mean, what are your thoughts, Victoria?
Well, I kind of feel the same way that you do, Mike. I think this time is a little different than last time because we have people that are coming from all over that are purchasing here. Where last time we had a lot of people purchasing only from New York and down in the Miami area. And then all of a sudden we crashed. But I see that with the COVID and the way the situation is now, people are truly making a move. And I can see it. I don't know if you've been downtown Stuart or downtown Port St. Lucie, but we just have an influx of so many more people that are here right now that are coming to visit our area and purchasing right now.
Yeah. And I hear it day in and day out. I mean, people are not going back. They're just not going to go back up to the Northeast and go through the lockdowns and the restrictions that are up there. Now, once August rolls around and it's 140 degrees, will that change? Possibly. We're probably going to lose some people. But I think that the demand is here. We've had, our governor has shown great guidance and leadership throughout this. I think it's it's going to be a desirable place to live for a very long time. So I don't think the demand is going to go down anytime soon, even with the higher prices, even with the higher interest rates. Things are just going to keep rolling along. Will they stay at 20%? I doubt it. But I did some numbers and I went over this last week and on the show. But if you bought an investment property today, and let's just pick a number, just pick it $300,000. You bought a rental property and you put 25% down. All right, 25% of that, $75,000. Even if your real estate went up only 5%, a realistic number, 5%, not 20%, 5%, you've gained $15,000 in appreciation just over a 1-year term. Now, where in any market are you going to be able to invest $75,000, get a $15,000 a year return? That's 20% return on investment year after year. And that's not even counting any positive cash flow from rental income. So I think that, real estate is going to continue to be a great investment for the unforeseen future.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about it, and that there are so many people coming into the Treasure Coast. So and in Port St. Lucie, it's over 100 a week, and that's really substantial when you start talking about. I guess Victoria's talked about it, and I've heard other realtors as well talk about just diminishing supply of existing homes.
Yeah. I mean, Victoria, how many months of supply are on the market right now?
Well, we get new things all the time, though, Mike. That's the good part about it. It might not be exactly what you're looking for and what you want. Like I had a real long checklist from somebody the other day. And we're not going to get everything that you want, but you're going to get some of the things that you want.
Yeah.
But,
And that's where, where Victoria and I work together because listen, it's tough out there to find a house. I mean, are you going to find, let's just like Victoria said, are you going to find 100% of what you want? Probably not. However, I have programs where if it's maybe an little older home, maybe the kitchen's outdated, maybe the bathroom's outdated, maybe it needs a new roof, maybe it needs an addition, you need a bigger house. Well, there's mortgage programs out there that can help you. There's renovation loans. We have FHA and conventional renovation loans where you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. I mean, I had a house, and this goes back a couple of years before the inventory problem, but this customer had a house with it's just burnt down. There was nothing left but the pad and a couple of the cinder block walls that are reusable. I used an FHA 203K program to basically rebuild that house. So there's nothing that we can't do. I mean, it's just, is it the easiest thing to do? No, but it can be done. So if you're disgruntled because you can't find a property out there, I would say let's keep an open mind. Maybe you can make that house, something that you would want to live in.
Absolutely. And you know what? Some of those are even better to do, to be honest with you, because then you're getting exactly what you want. And the house has been there for many years. It's settled. It's got a lot of extras that you can't get in brand new construction.
Yeah, I mean, we see it every day. I mean, listen, my wife is an avid HGTV watcher. I mean, the last thing I want to do is deal with real estate all day and come home and watch HGTV. But unfortunately, it's on television, so I watch. You know, it has a huge following. I mean, people are wanting to buy that house and make it their own. They want to put their own tile in. They want to, they want to put different lighting in. They want to change the floor plan of the property, and that can all be done. And that's some from for a lot of people, new construction is out of their price range, and I get that. But this is an opportunity where you can take something that's affordable and make it your own. You can do whatever you want. The sky's the limit.
I love that, Mike. And the other thing is, let's talk about new construction that a lot of people don't understand. When you're buying something in new construction, you're not getting a lot of the perks that people have already put in their home. Let's say a lot of the nice ceiling fans and blinds and all the other extras around your yard and maybe a fence and things of this sort. And the other thing is that a lot of these builders pass on to you their closing costs. So you'll have to pay state dock stamps on top of it. You have to pay title insurance on top of it. And you have a lot of other fees they charge you. So it does cost a lot more money to purchase new construction than pre-existing construction.
Yeah, that is a good point because, if you think about it, if you're buying new construction to that builder, this is a business, and they're going to pass along all the expenses to the buyer, and part of that is the closing costs. So on a transaction, on a normal transaction, on a resale, an existing home, typically a buyer would pay their closing costs and the seller would pay their closing costs. But on new construction, all those closing costs are passed along to the buyer. So Victoria is 100% right on this. It tends to, drive up the cost of new construction housing. So you'd have to be careful about that.
Well, let me tell you the next thing to be careful about new construction. Not that I'm opposed to new, because I'm not. But let's look at this. You have 10 months, sometimes even a little longer, from the time they get their permits and get this under construction. Anything can happen in 10 months. And if we do have a crash in any way at all, you can be affected by that. The other thing that happens with a lot of our builders is the money that you give as a deposit doesn't go just in a special account. For you, they use that money to do construction of other houses that might be built prior to you. So if for some reason this builder is not very solid and he's used up all his money and he crashes, you're going to lose that money.
Yeah, and Victoria, the same thing can happen with the borrower too. The borrower can crash during the construction process. And I'll give you a fine example. I pre-qualified someone to buy new construction. They put $75,000 down on the house to secure the contract. And the property was going to take the better part of a year to build. During that year, I told the borrower not to do anything with their finances, but they didn't go out and finance one Mercedes. They went out and financed two Mercedes. So all of a sudden they didn't qualify. So at the end, when we're trying to get their loan, now they don't qualify. So now their money's at risk. So anything can happen. So that's the kind of the risk that you run by doing new construction. Listen, again, I agree with Victoria. There's nothing like new construction. No one's ever lived there. You have brand new everything. It's wonderful, but things can happen along the way. So and the customer does have to be aware of those things.
Well, it's like people where I say, you hire a company to put in your swimming pool and you're so excited. And the next thing you know, you have this big hole in your backyard and you don't have a swimming pool. Same thing can happen with a home. And the only reason I say these to people is I just want them to be aware of some of the risks. I'm not saying it's going to happen to you, but it can happen. And I've seen it happen before. And I never want these young couples or anybody at any age to lose, like Mike said. Some of these companies want $70,000 deposit. That's a lot of money that you can lose. I
Now,
don't know in their lifetimes, but in my lifetime, that's a lot of money I don't want to lose.
now one way to try to limit, one way to try to limit those risks is you can build a house using a construction loan. I do offer construction loans. You put 10% down. So we can finance the lot, we can finance the construction of the property. And then what happens is on a construction loan, instead of giving a large down payment to a builder who may or may not be there at the end, you are in control of the money, you and the bank, of course. And we release those funds as the house progresses. As the project progresses, we'll release the funds to the builder. So that's one way of protecting yourself. Now, can things go wrong with that? Yeah, absolutely. They go wrong all the time. But the good thing is you're never paying the builder more than what they're owed, than the actual costs that are going into that project. So, hey, it's a good time to give you my phone number. If you wanted to get some mortgage information, if you don't want to call on the radio, which obviously we don't have any takers on that, but you can call me 772-285-0315. That's my cell phone number. You can call me anytime within reasonable hours, of course. 772-285-0315.
All right.
At 4 in the morning or something.
Yeah. What's your phone number, Victoria? Quick.
And I'm Victoria Loyd with Remax of Stuart, and I'm at area code 772-201-8740. But I want to put a shout out to Mike that my husband was in the hospital, and Mike was at the front desk letting us in to the hospital. And I said, it's Victoria Loyd. And he says, I'm on it like a hip pocket.
That's great. All right. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.